Hello, Grade 4s. Welcome to a series of lessons on structuring a narrative. This is lesson number 1. A good narrative or a story is put together very carefully. It's a bit like choosing the ingredients for a yummy meal. Then you follow a recipe and eventually you've made something really special. There are 7 steps to writing a good narrative. They are the sizzling start, the backfill, at least 3 problems, big and small, an exciting climax, and a satisfying ending. Let's listen to a story by Margaret Wilde, and she wrote a book called Space Travellers. She's managed to use all the 7 steps. Sometimes they might not be obvious, but if you look hard enough, you'll find them. I hope you enjoy this story. It's really nice. It's very thoughtful as well. Lately, Zach and his mother Mandy have been sleeping in a rocket. Every evening at sunset, Zach and Mandy climb up into the rocket, unroll their sleeping bags and switch on the torch. Mandy pours the milk and slices the cheese while Zach butters the bread. Then Mandy plays the flute and Zach listens, eyes closed. In the distance, dogs bark and sirens scream, but Zach is sure he can feel the rocket zooming through the clouds, past the moon, up towards the stars. We're lucky to sleep in a rocket, says Zach, and Mandy tries to smile. She's all scrunched up and her neck aches, and the nights are getting colder. But it is true, they are lucky to have found the rocket, much luckier than their friends, Simon, Ron, and Dorothy. Dorothy likes our rocket, says Zach. If it was bigger, she could sleep in it too. Then she could bring her cat. She doesn't have a cat, yawns Mandy. Not yet, says Zach, but if she slept in a rocket, she could have one. Mandy sighs. Time to go to sleep, she says. Zach switches off the torch, and all is dark and quiet in outer space. The weeks go by, and Zach and Mandy are still sleeping in the rocket. One Monday morning, they roll up their sleeping bags, as usual, brush the crumbs out of the rocket, and go to the restrooms at the railway station. Zach washes his face and brushes his teeth with his finger. Mandy washes her hair in the basin and blows it dry under the hand dryer. She checks Zach out. Not bad, mate, even though you've got potatoes growing behind your ears. Tomorrow night you're going to have a proper bath. A proper bath? Says Zach. Where? Mandy twirls him round and round. Surprise, she yells. Do you remember Lil and Rick? They've managed to get an old house in the city, and we can stay with them for a while. Just think, a room of our own. Zach feels dizzy. A room of their own. A room with a bed and a bath, perhaps even a TV. But what about the rocket? What about the moon and the stars and all those planets still to be explored in outer space? Mandy touches his cheek. We can't stay in the rocket forever, you know. Now we've got somewhere decent to live. I can try to get a job and you can start school, okay? Okay, says Zach. And it is okay, really. But he feels as though he has lost something, and he is very quiet when they join Ron and Simon and Dorothy for breakfast. It is a feast. Simon has some frankfurts the butcher gave him. Ron has 6 bread rolls. Dorothy has a flask of tea from the hairdresser on the corner. And Zach and Mandy hand around the last of their cheese. So, tell us, space travellers, says Simon. Where did you go last night, Jupiter or Mars? Pluto, actually, says Zach. Pluto, actually, echoes Dorothy. Fancy that. It's smaller than the moon and very cold, says Zach. Just as well. Mum and me were wearing our jumpers. Fancy that, says Dorothy. And Zach can tell she very, very much wants to be a space traveller too. Dorothy and the cat she doesn't yet have. Listen, folks, says Mandy quietly. We're moving into a room tomorrow. Here's the address. And when it's cold and raining, we'll squeeze you all in too, somehow. Okay? Okay, nod Simon and Ron. But Dorothy says suddenly, what about the rocket? Mandy grins and rubs her neck. The rocket is yours, Dorothy, if you want it. But I warn you, it's not very comfortable. Mine? Says Dorothy. Mine? And the sun is in her smile and a million billion stars in her eyes. You'll get space sick, woman, jokes Ron. Bet you don't get further than the moon, says Simon, smiling at Zack. But Dorothy just gives them all another wide dazed smile and hobbles off quick, smart to the library to find out everything about Jupiter and Mars and Pluto, actually. That night, the very last night in the rocket, Zack and Mandy decide to travel far and fast. Shut your eyes tight, says Mandy. As tight can be. Ready? Blast off. In the morning, Dorothy is waiting on the bottom step. Dorothy and the cat she now has. Zack shows her around the rocket and tells her about moonquakes and shooting stars and comets. There's even an enormous black hole, he says, right in the middle of the galaxy. Fancy that, says Dorothy, and Zack can tell she is just itching for it to be night. Zack and Mandy wave goodbye until they can't see Dorothy anymore. She'll make a good space traveller, says Zack, and he and Mandy each take a deep breath and march quick smart towards their new room in the city. And there you go, you've got the very satisfying picture there at the end of the story, which is what you need. So, what you need to do is, if you need to, watch the video again, scroll back and have a look at it. Then you need to open the narrative story graph template and have a go at filling in the 7 steps used in the story. When you double click on it, it'll download to your computer, and if you could save it as a PDF, then you can send it back to your teacher later on. So only when you've finished it can you then click on the link below and you can see the answers. No cheating, anyone? All right? Anyway, see how you go. And I'll see you for lesson 2.